If you think family can't betray you, wait until you see what my sister and her husband did when they thought I wasn't watching. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Marla Denton, I'm 33, and after a rough divorce, I thought I'd finally found a little peace. I live in a small 3-bedroom home tucked near the woods in Oregon. It isn't fancy, but it's mine. I'd spent years saving for it, painting the walls myself, planting flowers by the porch. It was quiet, calm, and finally safe, until my sister called. Kara, my younger sister, was always the star of the family. Pretty, confident, and a bit dramatic. She called saying she and her husband Eli were struggling. They'd lost their apartment after Eli lost his job, and she asked if they could stay, just for a few weeks. My heart went out to her. We grew up close, and I didn't want her to feel stranded. I said yes without thinking twice. Family helps family, right? At first, it was fine. Kara filled the house with noise and laughter again. She helped me cook. Eli mowed the lawn. It almost felt nice having people around, but small things started to bother me. My favorite mug went missing. My perfume ran out faster than usual. Doors were left unlocked, and someone had eaten the leftovers I'd saved for lunch. Then came the small lies. Kara told me she'd paid the electric bill, but when I checked, it was overdue. Eli promised to fix the porch light, but never did. When I brought it up, Kara would laugh it off. "Relax, Marla," she'd say. "You're wound too tight." I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Eli was polite, too polite. He always complimented me on dinner, always said I looked better than ever. It made my skin crawl. I told myself he was just trying to be nice, but something about the way his eyes lingered felt wrong. One evening, I came home from work and found the back door wide open. No one was home. I checked the drawers, nothing missing, but I couldn't shake the feeling someone had been in my room. That night, lying in bed, I heard footsteps outside my door. Soft, careful steps. I held my breath until they stopped. The next morning, I went out and bought security cameras. I told myself it was for peace of mind. I didn't mention it to Kara or Eli. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining things. I installed one in the living room, another near the kitchen, and one in the hallway leading to my bedroom. When I finished, I looked around my once cozy home. It didn't feel the same anymore. The air was heavy, like the walls were holding secrets. I didn't know it yet, but those cameras would soon show me things I could never unsee. That weekend, Marla couldn't ignore it anymore. Food was vanishing from the fridge, and faint noises woke her at night. Drawers sliding, quiet footsteps, something brushing against the floorboard. She kept telling herself it was the house settling, or maybe a stray raccoon that had found a way in. Still, curiosity gnawed at her until she finally sat down with her laptop and opened the security app. It was close to midnight when she played the footage. At first, the living room looked still, just the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the clock. Then movement. 2 figures appeared in the dim light, Kara and Eli. They weren't sneaking snacks or heading to bed. They were whispering and walking straight toward her bedroom. Marla leaned closer, her pulse drumming. She saw Kara open her dresser, sliding drawers out one by one. Eli stood beside her, holding a flashlight low to the floor. Kara pulled out a jewelry box and opened it, tilting it toward the light. Marla saw her sister's grin as she picked through necklaces and rings, laughing under her breath. "How much you think this could get?" Kara whispered, turning one of the bracelets over. Eli chuckled. "A few hundred, maybe more. She wouldn't even notice if we took one." Marla froze. The sound of their laughter hit her harder than any slap could have. She watched as Kara slipped one earring into her pocket, still smiling. Eli brushed her arm, whispering something she couldn't catch, and then they both left the room, leaving her dresser open. For a long moment, Marla just stared at the screen. Her chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her own sister and brother-in-law going through her things like thieves. Betrayal sank in slow, cold waves. She wanted to burst into the room, to scream, to throw them both out, but she sat perfectly still. After a while, she closed the laptop and pressed her palms against her face. Her mind was racing, but one thought kept rising above the rest. She needed to know how far it went. Maybe this wasn't the first time. Maybe it wasn't just the jewelry. She decided not to say a word. If she confronted them now, they'd lie or twist it around until she doubted herself again. No, she would stay quiet. Watch. Record. Let them think she was still the same trusting sister. Marla got up, checked that every camera was working, and walked through the house. The rooms looked unchanged, but everything felt different now, colder, smaller. She touched the edge of her dresser, then closed the drawer Kara had left open. In the reflection of the window, she caught her own face, pale, stunned, but steady. Whatever came next, she wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The morning after she saw the footage, Marla acted as if nothing had changed. She poured coffee, greeted her sister, and smiled through the strange new air in the house. Kara seemed brighter than usual, humming as she wiped the counters that didn't need wiping. She offered to fold Marla's laundry, to cook dinner, to clean out the fridge, things she'd never done before. Her voice was overly sweet, almost syrupy. "Thought I'd help out more," Kara said, flashing that wide grin that never reached her eyes. "You've been working so hard." Eli joined her at the table, sipping coffee. "You really are too good to be single, Marla," he joked. "Someone should have snatched you up by now." Marla forced a polite laugh, her fingers tightening around the mug. She looked at him carefully, but his face was smooth, unreadable. Kara laughed too loud, like the joke was harmless. The room smelled like burnt toast and tension. Later that night, Marla checked the footage again. The cameras showed what politeness hid. In the living room, after she'd gone to bed, Kara and Eli sat on the couch whispering. Kara rolled her eyes toward the hallway. "She's clueless," Kara said, smirking. "Still thinks we're some poor couple who needs her charity." Eli chuckled. "She's lonely. People like that believe anything if you smile at them." Kara leaned back, shaking her head. "She actually thinks I'm helping out because I care." Pathetic. The word hit harder than Marla expected. She turned off the volume, staring at the screen as Kara laughed. The next morning, Kara left a note on the fridge, heart-shaped sticky paper, cheerful handwriting. "Breakfast's ready. Love you, sis." Marla could almost taste the false sweetness. That week, things grew stranger. Marla noticed her favorite blanket missing from the couch. Her mail pile looked thinner than usual. When she asked about it, Kara shrugged. "Maybe you misplaced it." Another day, Marla came home to find her TV showing a blank screen. Her saved shows gone. Kara was sitting there, smiling. "Maybe you hit delete by accident." It was small, constant needling, little things that made her question her memory. Once, she walked into the kitchen and saw Kara holding her phone. When she asked why, Kara said she'd just found it on the counter. But Marla could have sworn she'd left it in her bag. Eli's attitude didn't help. He started complimenting her more, saying she looked fresh, or that her cooking made the house feel like home. He'd glance at her a little too long, and Kara would watch silently, as if enjoying the discomfort. Marla stayed quiet, pretending to trust them. At night, she reviewed more clips, Kara hiding her mail under the couch, Eli laughing. They whispered about waiting her out, and Kara muttered something about getting the house, once she gives up. That line burned. They weren't just using her kindness, they wanted her gone. Marla stopped sleeping through the night. She checked locks twice, moved her jewelry to a locked box, even counted the food in her pantry. Every movement felt calculated, every smile rehearsed. She spoke less, listened more. Kara's voice had become background noise, cheerful but cold underneath. One afternoon, Marla walked in to find Kara rearranging the furniture. "Just making space," Kara said lightly. "Feels like we live here now, right?" Marla's stomach twisted. That was the moment she finally understood. They didn't plan to leave. They were turning her home into theirs, one quiet manipulation at a time. She nodded slowly, forcing a calm smile. "Yeah," she said. "It really does feel that way." Kara beamed, believing she'd won. But Marla's mind was already elsewhere, on the cameras, the recordings, and the growing proof that would soon shatter their little act. Marla drove home that night through a drizzle that blurred the road lights into long streaks. Work had ended early, and for once she felt relief at the thought of quiet. No chatter, no fake smile. She pulled into the driveway, noticing both their cars already there. The house glowed warm behind the curtains, too peaceful for how heavy her chest felt. When she opened the door, the living room was dark. Only the hallway light was on. She slipped off her shoes, moving quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. Then she heard it. Soft laughter. A woman's giggle carried faintly down the hall. Her body froze mid-step. It came from her bedroom. For a moment, she couldn't move. The laughter turned into low voices, muffled whispers, a deep chuckle she recognized all too well. She wanted to believe it was the TV, maybe one of them on the phone, but she knew that wasn't true. The sound of the bed springs erased every doubt. Marla stood in the hallway, her throat tight, every breath shallow. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. Her own sister's voice drifted through the door, soft, teasing, familiar in the worst way. Then Eli's lower, followed by another round of laughter. Her pulse thundered. For a second, she almost pushed the door open, ready to scream. But her body wouldn't move. Instead, she turned around, walked back down the hall, and out the front door. The cool night air hit her face like ice. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, listening to her heart hammer. She stayed there until her hands stopped shaking. Later, inside, the house looked exactly as she'd left it, still, silent, pretending nothing had happened. She avoided her room, slept on the couch with a blanket pulled up to her chin. The smell of her own perfume on that blanket made her stomach twist. At sunrise, she made coffee, went to work as if it were any other day. But when she got home that evening, She sat down with her laptop again and opened the security footage. She fast-forwarded through hours of empty rooms until she saw the timestamp from the night before. Her bedroom door appeared on the screen, closed at first. Then Eli entered, glancing back once before pulling Kara inside. Marla watched every second, the gestures, the laughter, the ease between them. Her face stayed blank, but her hands trembled so badly she had to steady the laptop against her knees. There was no room for denial. Every ounce of trust she'd clung to shattered quietly on that screen. When the video ended, she closed it without replaying. Her eyes felt raw, her breath shallow. She sat in silence for a long time, staring at nothing. The room around her looked dimmer, smaller, as if even the walls had turned against her. She didn't cry. There was nothing left to say or feel. Only a numb, hollow cold that spread through her chest. That night, Kara and Eli laughed over dinner, pretending nothing was wrong. Marla smiled back, even joined their small talk, her voice steady and calm. Inside, though, something had shifted. She wouldn't yell, wouldn't beg for answers. They wouldn't get her tears. From that moment, her silence became a plan, a quiet weapon sharpened by every lie they told. The next few mornings moved like scenes she wasn't part of. Marla woke before sunrise dressed, and went about her routine as if her world hadn't been ripped apart. Inside, her mind was cold, sharp, and steady. She no longer felt the ache of betrayal, only focus. She waited until Kara and Eli left for errands, then pulled out a duffel bag and began moving through the house with careful steps. Jewelry, important papers, her grandmother's watch, spare cash, each item wrapped and packed with quiet precision. She carried everything to her car, locking the door behind her each trip. No one saw her drive to the small storage unit on the edge of town. The space smelled of dust and oil, but it was safe. She arranged her things neatly inside, signed the lock, and drove away without looking back. The next day, during her lunch break, she made a call to her lawyer. Her voice stayed calm as she explained the situation. The house was in her name. They were guests who'd overstayed. Eviction was the next step. The lawyer agreed, saying papers could be ready soon. Marla thanked him and hung up, staring at her reflection in the black phone screen. For the first time in weeks, she felt in control. At home that evening, she acted as if nothing had changed. Kara was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, while Eli pretended to fix a loose drawer. Marla joined them, smiling. "I thought we could do dinner together," she said lightly. She cooked spaghetti, cracked jokes, even poured them wine. Kara talked about job hunting. Eli laughed at something on TV. It was a normal evening on the surface, except Marla already knew the clock was ticking. Later that night, she checked the cameras again. She wasn't looking for surprises anymore, just confirmation of what she already knew. The footage from that afternoon stopped her cold. Kara sat at the kitchen table, smirking. "She still thinks we're struggling," Kara said, spinning a spoon between her fingers. "It's almost cute how clueless she is." Eli's voice came from off-screen. "You think she suspects?" Kara laughed. "Marla, please. She believes anything I say." The sound of her sister's laughter filled the room. Marla stared at the screen, her mouth tightening into a thin line. There was no anger this time, just a quiet, icy satisfaction. She paused the footage, closed the laptop, and turned off the light. The next morning, she made breakfast like always, eggs, toast, coffee brewing slow. Kara wandered in wearing Marla's robe. "You're up early again," she said, reaching for a mug. Marla smiled as she poured coffee into Kara's cup. "Couldn't sleep," she said softly. Eli joined them, still half asleep, mumbling a good morning. The smell of toast filled the kitchen. Everything felt ordinary, but Marla's thoughts were elsewhere, on the envelope her lawyer had promised to send that afternoon. As she buttered her toast, Kara chattered about plans for the weekend. Marla nodded along, her smile calm and practiced. Inside, she was counting hours. By the time the sun set, a knock at the door would change everything. She looked across the table at her sister, who was still laughing at something small, unaware of the storm about to hit. Marla sipped her coffee slowly, steady as glass. The taste was bitter, but victory often was. The envelope arrived that Friday morning, slipped through the mail slot with a dull thud. Marla stood in the hallway holding it, the paper cold against her fingers. She didn't open it right away. She already knew what it said. Instead, she walked to her desk, plugged in a small flash drive, and began copying every clip from her hidden cameras. Every whisper, every stolen moment, every cruel word. The files filled the screen like a timeline of betrayal. She saved each one, labeling them by date, watching the progress bar move slowly toward completion. When the last file transferred, she ejected the drive and slipped it into her pocket. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane. It felt like the pause before a storm. That afternoon, Kara and Eli came home together. Marla was sitting at the dining table with a calm she didn't feel. Kara's face was flushed, eyes sharp with confusion. "We just got this," she said, slapping the eviction notice onto the table. "You're kicking us out? After everything we've been through?" Eli stood behind her, jaw tight. "That's pretty heartless, Marla." Marla looked from one to the other, her voice steady. "Heartless?" she said quietly. "You might want to sit down before you call me that." Kara scoffed, crossing her arms. "This is unbelievable. You could have talked to us." Marla didn't answer. She picked up the remote, turned on the TV, and opened a folder from her laptop. The first video filled the screen, grainy footage from her bedroom. Kara's voice echoed faintly through the living room speakers, joking about how easy it'd be to sell the bracelet. Eli's laugh followed, unmistakable. Kara froze. Her mouth opened slightly, no sound coming out. Eli's face drained of color. Marla clicked to the next clip. The living room. Kara calling her pathetic. Eli saying she was lonely enough to believe anything. Another clip, this one from the kitchen. Kara rifling through drawers, tucking an envelope into her bag. "Stop," Kara said suddenly, her voice cracking. "Turn it off." Marla didn't move. She let the next file play, the one that showed them in her bed. No words, only movement, the kind that didn't need explanation. Kara's scream tore through the room. "How could you spy on us?" she shouted, trembling. "You're insane." Eli stepped forward, trying to talk over her. "This isn't what it looks like, we were just—" "Don't," Marla said sharply. Her tone stopped him mid-sentence. "You don't get to lie anymore." The silence that followed was heavy and long. Kara's breathing turned to sobs. Eli stood rigid, eyes on the floor. Marla reached for the remote and paused the video. "I'm not asking for explanations," she said. "I've seen enough. You have 48 hours to pack your things and leave. If you're still here after that, I'll hand this drive to the police and file for theft and trespassing." Kara's sobs turned to angry gasps. "You wouldn't dare." Marla looked at her sister, unblinking. "Try me." Eli put a hand on Kara's shoulder, but she jerked away. The room smelled faintly of burnt dust from the old TV, the only sound the soft buzz of static. Marla stood, pocketed the flash drive, and turned off the screen. No yelling, no threats, just silence. The kind that ended everything. Kara stormed down the hallway with tears streaking her face, dragging a suitcase that thudded against the floorboard. "You're cruel, Marla," she shouted, her voice breaking halfway through the word. "You don't even have a heart." Marla stood in the doorway, arms folded, expression still. The morning light filtered through the blinds, cutting across the room in pale stripes. Kara's cries echoed through the empty walls, sharp and uneven. Eli said nothing, just moved back and forth between the bedroom and the car outside, his eyes never meeting Marla's. By noon, most of their things were gone, bags, boxes, fragments of a life that didn't belong there anymore. Kara slammed the door behind her as she left, her sobs fading into the sound of the engine starting. The house fell silent again, the kind of quiet that rings in your ears. That evening, Marla walked through the empty rooms. Their scents still lingered, cheap perfume, cologne, faint traces of their presence in the air. She collected stray things they'd left behind, a pair of socks, a phone charger, a chipped mug. She placed them in a box and set it by the door, her movements slow, deliberate. For a brief moment, she thought it was over. She could breathe again. But the calm didn't last. 2 nights later, the motion alert on her phone woke her at 2 a.m. The screen showed movement in the living room. She tapped the feed, and the image came into focus. Eli crouched by the cabinet, flashlight in hand. Her heart stayed steady this time. She didn't move, didn't shout. She watched him on the tiny screen as he opened drawers, pocketing small things, cash from a jar, a few pieces of silver. When he reached for the envelope of documents she'd left on the table, she made the call. The dispatcher's voice was calm and direct. Within minutes, the flashing blue and red lights filled her street. Marla stayed on the porch, wrapped in her robe, as 2 officers led Eli out in handcuffs. He didn't look at her. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under their boots. Kara showed up the next morning, pounding on the door, demanding to know what happened. Marla didn't answer. She watched from behind the curtain as her sister shouted into the empty air, then walked away. After that, days passed without a word or sign from either of them. The quiet settled back into the house, heavier than before. The room seemed bigger, emptier, as if the air itself had expanded to fill the absence. Marla cooked dinner for one, the sound of utensils echoing too loud against the plate. The cameras stayed where they were, still blinking red in the corners, reminders of what she'd survived. She sat in the living room one evening, staring at the empty chairs. Victory didn't feel like she thought it would. There was no joy, no triumph, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the weight of her own breathing. The house was hers again, but the warmth was gone. 3 weeks passed before Marla saw that familiar car again. It pulled up slowly, the tires crunching over the gravel drive, sunlight flashing off the windshield. Marla was sitting by the window, coffee cooling in her hand. When the door opened, Kara stepped out, her hair unkempt, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence gone. Marla didn't move at first. She watched her sister stand there for a few seconds, hesitating before walking toward the porch. The knock came, soft and uncertain. Marla opened the door just enough for Kara to see her face. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. Kara's voice trembled. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Please just listen." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Marla stepped aside and let her in. The house felt colder with both of them in it, like the air remembered what had happened. Kara stood near the couch, twisting her hands together, her eyes already red. "I didn't know what he'd do," Kara started, her words rushing out. "Eli, he twisted everything. He made me believe you didn't care about me anymore. He said you looked down on us, that you wanted us gone. I swear, I never meant for things to go that far." Marla said nothing. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. Kara's voice wavered as she kept going. "I was stupid," she said. "He used me. I thought he loved me. When you threw us out, I realized how much I'd lost. I've been staying with a friend. I don't even know where he is now. I need you to forgive me. You're my sister, Marla." Tears slid down Kara's cheeks. She reached out, but Marla didn't move. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Then Marla walked to the cabinet, picked up a small remote, and turned on the TV. The screen flickered to life. Kara frowned, confused. "What are you doing?" Marla didn't answer. She opened one of the old video files. The image appeared, Kara sitting with Eli on the couch, laughing. Eli's voice came first, low and mocking. "She's so lonely she'd probably thank us for keeping her company." Kara's laughter followed, sharp and cruel. "I know," she said on the recording. "She's pathetic. Always pretending she's fine." The sound filled the living room. Kara stared at the screen, her face draining of color. "Turn it off," she whispered. "Please." Marla didn't. She let the clip finish, then pressed pause. The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. "That wasn't manipulation," Marla said finally, her tone calm but flat. "That was choice." Kara's mouth opened, but no words came. She took a shaky breath, wiped her face, and stepped back. Her eyes darted toward the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Marla didn't respond. She just stood there, steady and quiet, as Kara turned and walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Through the window, Marla watched her sister cross the yard, head down, shoulders hunched. The car started, rolled down the street, and disappeared around the corner. The house went still again. Marla turned off the TV and stood there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. It was the last time she ever saw Kara. Marla started with the bedroom. The space had held too much, the laughter, the betrayal, the sleepless nights. She stripped it bare, down to the walls and frame. The mattress went first, dragged out to the curb before dawn. Then the curtains, the rug, the bedding, everything that had absorbed too many memories. The smell of old paint still lingered, so she opened the windows wide and let the cold Oregon air sweep through. She spent the weekend painting. The old beige walls became a muted blue-gray, calm and steady. Each stroke of the roller felt like wiping away a layer of the past. When she was done, she stood in the doorway and looked at the clean, empty room. It didn't feel like home yet, but it didn't hurt to look at anymore. She bought a new bed, nothing fancy, just something simple and solid. When it arrived, she set it up herself, tightening each screw, aligning every corner. The locks on the doors were next. She changed them all, one by one, until the sound of the latch clicking shut brought a small, steady comfort. The cameras stayed. She couldn't bring herself to take them down. They weren't about fear anymore. They were a boundary, a quiet reminder that she wouldn't be blindsided again. Every red blink in the corners of her home gave her a strange kind of peace. Days fell into a careful rhythm. She went to work, came home, cooked small meals, and kept things clean. There were moments when she caught herself listening for voices that weren't there, half expecting footsteps in the hallway. But the house stayed quiet, and the quiet began to feel safe again. Her therapist said healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to live with the truth. Marla nodded but didn't say much. She went to her sessions every Thursday after work, sitting in the same chair near the window. She talked about control, about silence, about the way trust had turned into something she couldn't recognize anymore. The words came slowly at first, then easier, until she could say her sister's name without her chest tightening. Sometimes she drove past the storage unit, unlocking the door just to see that her belongings were still there, untouched, waiting. She never stayed long, just long enough to remind herself that she still owned something safe, something no one had taken from her. At night, she'd make tea and sit by the window, watching the streetlights cast pale circles on the wet road. There was a kind of calm in the routine, though it wasn't happiness. She didn't expect that anymore. What she found instead was steadiness, something quieter but stronger. The betrayal no longer burned like it once did. It sat somewhere deep, dulled by time but still present. She understood now that some things don't close neatly. You don't get neat endings or clean apologies. Sometimes you just build new walls, repaint old rooms, and start breathing again. And that was enough for her. Months passed before Marla touched the cameras again. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm: work, evening walks, the smell of coffee in the mornings. The red lights still blinked faintly in the corners, patient reminders of everything that had happened. One rainy afternoon, she decided it was time. She powered up her laptop, connected the system, and opened the archive. The folders stretched back across the months, timestamps and dates she'd memorized, moments she'd already lived twice. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but she paused. Before she wiped everything clean, she wanted one last look, one last confirmation that the story was finished. She clicked through the recordings, watching the static, the empty rooms, the quiet nights. Nothing unexpected, just silence, just stillness. Then she stopped on a file she hadn't opened before, one of the earliest clips. The timestamp was from a week before everything had fallen apart. She hesitated, then pressed play. The frame flickered, and there they were, Kara and Eli, sitting on the edge of her bed. The lighting was dim, the sound faint but clear enough to catch the tone of their voices. Kara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her laughter small and soft. "She'll never know," Kara whispered. Eli smiled, brushing her hair aside. "Yeah," he said. "She trusts you too much." For a moment, Marla just watched them, two people who'd thought they were clever, two faces she'd once called family. The camera caught the smallest details, the curve of Kara's grin, the smug ease in Eli's posture. It looked so distant now, like something from another lifetime. Marla's lips curved into a faint smile. "Oh, I knew," she murmured. Her voice was steady, without bitterness. She didn't feel the anger anymore, or the sting that used to sit under her ribs. What she felt was lighter, final. She closed the video and opened the control panel, selecting every file in the archive. The cursor blinked, waiting for confirmation. She clicked delete. The progress bar crawled forward, erasing hours of noise, shadows, and secrets. When it was done, the screen went blank except for a single message: no recordings available. She shut the laptop, the sound of the lid closing sharp in the quiet room. Marla stood, looking around at the home she'd rebuilt, the calm colors, the new locks, the space that finally belonged to her again. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. For the first time, it didn't sound lonely. It sounded alive. She grabbed her jacket, keys, and stepped toward the front door. The air outside was cool and damp, carrying the smell of rain and earth. She locked the door behind her, the click clear and certain. For a moment, she stood on the porch, listening to the wind move through the trees. Then she took a slow breath, steady and deep, and walked down the steps. There was nothing left to watch, nothing left to replay. The house, the memories, the pain, they were all behind her now. And for the first time in a long while, Marla felt free. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from my sister and her husband, or should I have given them another chance? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories.